What is that? Daryl asked as a tinge of fear grew in her heart. She had never felt fear like this before, not even when her world broke to pieces and she had to fly away to a different planet. Drake looked at the black and dark figure, a blob of smoky darkness of which only wings were visible. It's strong, isn't it? He asked. Ning tried to look through the darkness, but even his vision didn't help him there. When he tried to look with his heat vision, it was almost as if there was nothing there. The only thing he could see were the two red glows inside the dark haze that he assumed were its eyes. What the hell is that? He couldn't help but wonder. Someone here was strong enough to summon me, the voice said. I will have to thank you for that. The void suddenly moved towards Nova, who still had her hands on her head and couldn't see anything. She wished she could die still, so when the void attacked her, she teleported out of the stage and appeared elsewhere away from Hard. What? Ning suddenly stood up in surprise. He wasn't surprised that Nova managed to escape, but rather the newly arrived monster tried to kill her. The monster was speaking fluently and making proper, thoughtful decisions, so it was only surprising that he managed to try and harm Nova without harming himself. Does he not have a soul? Ning thought. Every intelligent being had a soul. That was what being intelligent was after all. But if he could protect himself from Nova's influence, there were two possibilities. The first one was that he didn't have a soul and was still intelligent, just like Genesis, who was still an enigma to Ning. The second possibility was that the void was so strong that Nova's mere powers weren't able to influence it at all. Return where you came from. Genesis' voice boomed through the entire white room. Suddenly, they all saw light blooming beneath the void as a portal opened up to take him back. No. The void said, and suddenly the portal disappeared. Nova was already aware of what was happening and had run back to Ning and the others. On the other side, the remaining three were scared out of their mind and had retreated as far away as they could. Genesis' expressions were unreadable, but everyone there could tell he was angry. Suddenly a massive shockwave rocked the people in the surroundings and threw them behind. When they stood up, they could see a point of contention between the void and Genesis at the center, where space itself seemed to warp with the powers between the two of them. For someone like you, I didn't expect you to be so weak, the void spoke. What have you been doing that you have no power at all? You don't need to know, Genesis said as a bright white light escaped from his hands towards the dark void. You were right, the void said. I just need to devour you, and then I might be able to replace you entirely. A bright black spark appeared where the space twisted and it struck the white light in the air. Suddenly, the white room shook and the seating area where Ning and the others sat was completely destroyed. They all fell to the ground and had to pick themselves back up. Ning hurriedly returned to his feet and helped Nova and Drake get back up as well. Daryl got back on her own and suddenly her eyes went wide. What the hell is that? She asked, pointing towards the two. Ning turned around to see what she was pointing to, and that was when he saw it. In the spot where the void and Genesis clashed just now, there was a black crack that hung in the middle. A crack in space. Ning looked around to see what was happening when Drake notified them of something. Anyone else thinks that ceiling is getting closer towards us? He asked. What? Ning quickly looked up and saw that the dimensionless room was losing its dimensions. What the? Even as he watched, the ceiling got smaller and smaller until it was to the point that he could see the actual ceiling with his bare eyes. It wasn't just the ceiling, even the wall was getting smaller and smaller to the point that Saf and the rest were already backed up against the wall far away. What is happening? Nova asked with a scared look on her face. The space, Ning said with a dumb look on his face. I think it's leaking out of that crack. Just as he said that, the void and Genesis fought again, and another crack, like glass shattering in slow motion, appeared in the space as it propagated outwards like spiderwebs. Suddenly, the speed at which the space was leaking out of this place sped up and the room got smaller. Ning saw the debris around the room touch the cracks in space and get split in half like it was nothing. Don't touch the cracks, he shouted for everyone in the room to hear. Daryl, who was getting close to a crack, immediately got out of the way and ran to the other side of the room, which was increasingly getting small. Now, it was barely 50 meters wide. The cracks continued to propagate as they got larger and even tinier cracks appeared around them. Get back! Ning shouted, and finally, someone who hadn't heard him before, heard him this time. Genesis swiped his hands and splintered cracks that were all around the room suddenly got dragged back into the original crack like a bubble spiderweb imploding on itself. The crack suddenly disappeared as a flicker of light appeared where it was before, booming back to life as a 10 feet wide hole in space. On the other side, Ning saw the way out to the planet. So, without hesitation, he grabbed Nova and jumped through. Ning appeared in the middle of the jungle and suddenly felt ether all around him. "We're back on the planet," he said, and looked towards Nova, who was trembling in fear. Daryl and Drake jumped after him as well and arrived next to him. "Shit," Ning thought, and immediately opened a portal to the city they were in just moments before and pushed Nova through it. "What was that for?" Drake asked with a confused look. "Our powers are available here," Ning said. "You want her around?" "Oh, hell no," Drake said. "Nova, stay in there, you'll be safe," Ning shouted at her. Nova looked around the city and nodded. Then, Ning closed the portal and looked at the massive opening in the air through where Saf, Toron, and Luna jumped through as well. "You all safe?" Saf asked when she arrived through. "Where's that other girl?" "Safe," Ning said, not bothering to explain at the moment. They heard sounds of boom coming from the opening in the air and even saw flashes of white and black light from time to time. The two of them were fighting with powers that most of them didn't even realize existed. The space trembled once more and everything that existed inside that white room suddenly flooded out of the crack, including Genesis and the Void. The Void seemed a little more physical now, while Genesis lost some of his shine too. A black spark appeared next to Genesis and attacked him. However, even though it struck his body, it couldn't pass him at all. Genesis swiped his hands and suddenly the black spark disappeared. He then created a massive spear of light and sent it hurtling towards the Void. Something small and black struck the light spear and within moments the spear disintegrated as if it were nothing. "Why are you so weak?" the Void asked. "I can't seem to understand. I thought beings like you were supposed to be far stronger than the ones like me because of your source, but it doesn't match you at all. Where did you lose all of your energy?" it asked with a confused voice. "I might be weak, but I'm still strong enough to beat you," Genesis said. Suddenly, some sort of aura appeared all around him. Chi, aura, willpower, ether, life force, spiritual energy, mana, chakra, magicules, and all the other energy in the surroundings started moving on their own. Ning looked at Genesis with a face full of surprise at the fact that Genesis was actually using all of those powers. Sword, saber, axe, spear, arrow, and every other form of weapon intent appeared around Genesis. What is happening?" Toron cried out as the suit covered his entire body, including his behind, as he got ready to run away. Little Blue chirped something next to Saf, and she too got ready to run away. Daryl's body was halfway through transforming back into a dragon, and Drake had already turned into a bat. Luna was also about to run away as well. Only Ning stood where he did and did not even think about moving. He had no threat of death to worry about and he wanted to see the battle. Fights like this were something he would likely come by very rarely. So, he stayed and watched. Genesis threw everything he had at the Void, who also threw out his entire arsenal at Genesis. Space cracked, bolts of lightning flew off, black fire raised the ground, and loud sounds tore off trees from the surrounding. A million different things happened as the two fought. Genesis used every little power he had and started showing the Void just how strong he was. The Void, despite his big talk, couldn't keep up against Genesis as his black haze slowly disappeared, and his real body was visible. The Void was a massive eyeball with two glowing red gems around the corner of its eye. Around the eyeball, tentacles flailed out, thousands of them. Behind the eye, there was a massive wing that kept on flapping on either side. Genesis was also losing his glow and was now more than just visible. He now looked like the perfect, most handsome, middle-aged man that had a spotlight on him. He still shined, but not so much that no one could see what he looked like. Genesis then dashed towards the eyeball. Until now, he had been sending all the attacks through a distance, but now he went physical. Despite the eyeball's attacks, Genesis didn't stop and arrived next to the eyeball and punched it directly in the middle of the eye. Genesis' fist sunk into the eyeball and knocked it to the ground. Arg! The eyeball cried out in pain, but Genesis wasn't done. He punched again, and again. Then he stomped on it. Next, he created a sword out of ether and jammed it into the eyeball. Still, he couldn't pierce the eyeball because of how strong it was. "I'm sorry, I will leave," the eyeball shouted finally. Genesis threw the sword to the side and started digging his hands into the eyeball. "Stop," the eyeball shouted. A mere constellation thinks he can fight against me? Genesis spoke. I existed before the remains that formed you even existed. I existed long before the galaxy you live in existed, and you think you can fight me? Genesis shouted as he dug more and more into the eyeball. Suddenly, the eyeball popped and deflated as if it were a balloon, and after that, it vanished as if it never existed. Phew. Genesis took a deep breath when she suddenly noticed space move behind him. He suddenly swung his hand behind him to hit whoever was behind, but instead of hitting someone, his hand was caught. Genesis quickly turned around to see an ether-filled Ning grab his hand. What are you doing? Genesis asked, but Ning didn't answer. He wasn't even looking at Genesis. Instead, he was focused on the bunch of notifications that appeared in front of him out of nowhere. That was the notification that struck Ning the most surprising of all. Various notifications popped up of the system re-establishing what it had previously taken away, but the energy cap was something it never touched. The energy cap was something that was placed so that the host never immediately became the strongest being in the universe and caused problems before even realizing what he exactly was. So, Ning couldn't understand why it was removed at all. Just as he was thinking that the list of notifications had something he hadn't heard before. A set of notifications appeared even after everything from the system returned. Will? Ning thought. As in the will from the will manifestation? Ning couldn't believe that was what Genesis was. Even more so, the system used the word galactical. That meant that Genesis was the will manifestation of a galaxy. Alexis was the will manifestation of the planet Vilmore, and she was pretty strong. However, Ning couldn't even begin to comprehend just how strong Genesis would be. What are you doing? Let go of. Genesis stopped shouting as his eyes went wide. He noticed something, a vague sensation from deep within Ning. Like pulses coming from deep underwater, Genesis felt like he knew what it was. It was the existence of a system. However, Genesis was shocked at just how strong these pulses were, and was also surprised that Ning's pulses weren't muffled by his soul. That was when he noticed something he should have noticed a long time ago but didn't. Ning didn't have a soul. So, if that was the case then. The energy system. His face had a look of shock as he realized that a host of the energy system was here. And he had got to him before he could get him. No. Genesis tried to pull his arm away from Ning and run away, but at the same time, a notification appeared in front of Ning. Genesis got out of Ning's clutch and disappeared away, leaving Ning alone on the ground. System. He's gone. What do we do? Ning shouted. He was worried that Genesis would capture him or come back to attack him. What? Ning quickly opened his status and his eyes went wide. Status name. Ning Ruigong Energy, 5.6 quintillion. Separated energy heat energy, 20 billion sound energy, 22 billion. Kinetic energy, 218 billion electrical energy, 10 billion. Chi energy, 168 quadrillion ether energy, 615 quadrillion. Mana energy, 485 quadrillion magicule energy, 323 quadrillion. Willpower energy, 603 quadrillion spiritual energy, 937 quadrillion. Life force energy, 364 quadrillion aura energy, 537 quadrillion. Essence energy, 366 quadrillion chakra energy, 1.2 quintillion. Skill. Ning's expression was a mix of shocked and dumbfounded as he looked at the amazing information in front of him. He was so much in shock that he didn't even know what to do. Even more so than that, he was constantly gaining even more energy. His greedy heart took over for a second as he immediately said, "Buy everything that's in the list." Ning barely lost anything with that. The things in his auto-buy list cost barely anything compared to what he had at the moment after all. Wait, what else should I buy? He started thinking. What about the next energy? Have I reached there yet? Ning asked. Damn it, I need more than this to unlock it? Ning asked. Sigh, alright, Ning said and thought of other things to buy when something appeared in front of him. Genesis was back, and he wasn't looking very well. Shit, I forgot he existed, Ning said as he got ready to battle. What? What's this link? Tell me, Ning asked and the system answered. Even as it did, Genesis directly started attacking Ning. He created many different attacks and threw them at Ning. Ning put up his hands to block him, but somehow he didn't feel anything. What? He put away his hands and looked at Genesis. The attacks that were supposed to have landed on him seemed to have damaged him somehow. So, Genesis is hurting himself by hurting him? Ning asked. Genesis looked appalled at what was happening and dashed forward to attack Ning. His tough physical body struck Ning, however, the face that was smashed was Genesis' own. Instead of taking damage, Ning simply continued sucking away Genesis' energy. You had the energy system from the start? Genesis asked. Of course, Ning answered freely now that he knew there was no reason to feel scared of him. So you infiltrated my competition to ruin me, is that right? Genesis asked. Well, infiltrated wasn't the right word, but Ning went along with it. Yes, he said. You were killing humans, ruining their lives, and above all, you created a system that went against the laws of the universe and the multiverse. Hey, I should have known there was something wrong with you when you used both chi and ether at the same time, Genesis said. Then, he suddenly looked up at Ning. You want to kill me to protect the people, huh? Very well then, Genesis said, since I'm going to die anyway. I will die while killing every single human in this quadrant of my galaxy. Genesis suddenly created a big attack, one that threatened to destroy this planet. No. Ning tried to jump at him to stop him, but he disappeared to someplace else. System. What should I do? He asked. Okay, got it, Ning said and looked around. I need to go where he is. Teleport. Suddenly, he teleported to where Genesis was, surprising Genesis too. No. Genesis shouted and teleported away again, but Ning quickly followed him. This time, he managed to grab him, and he held him tight. Genesis tried to force Ning away, but all the force he put on Ning instead crushed himself even more. Ning used some of the energy to teleport away from whatever planet he was in and went someplace safe. They were now deep in space with nothing around them. As such, despite what Genesis was going to do, he wouldn't be able to hurt anything. Ning grabbed him with both hands and feet, not letting him go. Can he really destroy a fourth of the galaxy? Ning asked the system. Let me go. Genesis shouted. The sound never reached his ears due to the lack of air, but Ning somehow heard it through the vibrations in his body. Ning held on to him even tighter. Genesis tried pouring out his energy for some attack, but every time he did that, all the energy he poured out only went into Ning. Ning saw the numbers on his status increase. From 5 quadrillion, it had already gone upwards of a 100 quadrillion. He wanted to think of things to buy, but now was not the time. Slowly, the energy coming from Genesis started dwindling down. At the same time, Genesis started begging. Please, please just let me go. I just wanted to help people. I just wanted to make people happy, he said. Ning scoffed. You think that is going to fool me after so many people you killed? Ning asked. You killed some too. Genesis shouted. Because you forced us to, Ning said. Now, I'm forcing you to die. Ning continued sucking in the energy and slowly holes appeared all around Genesis. Like he was some object made up of light, he slowly started tearing away into pieces of bright blobs which all went directly into Ning. Piece by piece, he tore away until there was nothing but a single sphere of iridescent light that remained. The system. Genesis was fully dead, and he would remain that way. Ning slowly reached out his hands to grab the system. As soon as he did, the system entered his body, trying to find and latch onto the soul. However, before any of that could happen, the energy system flared to life and absorbed the absurd amount of energy that had gone into making the system. Suddenly, Ning's left arm tingled with something and he turned to look. There was a crack along the entirety of his left arm as white light spread out of it. What is happening? Ning asked the system. Ning thought to himself what he could do with this energy. He could open the portal halfway to Kumiya most likely. However, there was a promise he made to a girl he needed to fulfill before he could think of anything else. Cracks appeared around the rest of his body as his system continued consuming the rest of the system. Ning teleported back to planet Genesis, which was fortunately still there despite Genesis' death. He opened his status and realized that for some reason, his energy was capped at around 1.5 sextillion energy. That was the most his body could handle. Everything aside from that was leaking away from the tears at his seams. What should I do to be able to absorb more? Ning asked. Ning gave Nova the technique. It wasn't a read and learn kind of technique, but rather one that was directly taught to them at once. The system installed the technique and the way to use it directly onto Nova's broken soul as a system would to a normal soul. Nova's soul was already broken and this was her last life, so Ning saw nothing wrong with what it was doing. In fact, it was helping her in ways that no other could. Ning couldn't even imagine Nova winning the competition and gaining the system only for her soul to fade away because it could not handle any more breaking. Ning shook his head and told Nova what he had just done. You fixed me?" she asked while looking at Ning, who himself needed a fixing. Ning's body was still wrecked from the inside due to the massive amount of energy that was in the system itself. The most he could keep was 1.5 sextillion energy in his body right now. That was 100,000 times more energy than what Ning had gathered his entire life. He was still surprised at how much energy he had gotten. He looked at Nova with a gentle smile and answered, "I didn't fix you," he said. "I gave you the tools to do so. You should have realized the 2 techniques you had received, right?" Nova nodded. "Use the first one for a while. It will take a long time, be patient. Then, you will one day come to understand that your soul has lost almost all of the power. Once that is done, you can use the next technique to start controlling your powers," Ning said. "I'm sorry, but I cannot remove your powers," Ning said. "It will still stay there, cause problems. What I can do is give you the reign over your own powers. No matter how many people there are or how much trouble you are in, you will always be in control of your powers on whether you want to use it or not," Ning said. I can control my powers?" Nova's eyes started watering. "Yes," Ning said. "I made a promise, didn't I?" Nova cried and hugged the breaking Ning. Ning hugged her back and pat her head a few times. "You must be tired," he said. "Take some rest." "What about the competition?" she asked. Ning was a little taken aback and then he remembered. "I didn't tell you, did I?" he asked. "Genesis is dead. He's dead and he's gone. There is no more competition." "He's dead? How? Where?" she asked. "I did," Ning said. "You don't need to know how. Just rest for now." Nova's feet started trembling again. But if he's dead then, what about this city? He created this city, right? Will I start killing again? Ning hadn't thought of that. System? "Oh, that's great then," Ning said. "You have nothing to worry about, it seems." "Really?" Nova asked. "Yes. The city will dampen your powers while you work on it. Not to mention, you can kill barely anyone here even if you go out," Ning said. "But of course, I can understand that you don't want to leave." "Yes," Nova said. "All right, do what I say. Take some rest, I have some things to deal with." "I will be back in a couple of hours," Ning said. He walked outside and tried to feel the chi and the ether, but nothing was in the air. The city's seals really were keeping the energy outside, so it wasn't Genesis doing for the most part, he thought and looked down. He saw the cracks all over his body and remembered what was happening inside of him. "Right, I need to buy some things," he thought. "Damn it, what should I buy?" He racked his brains but the pressure was too much. "What should I get?" he thought for a moment. "I should probably get some knowledge, but about what?" Okay, Ning said, not really understanding what a star chart was. He assumed it was something like a map, but then why not call it a map? Suddenly, Ning sucked in a deep breath as a massive amount of information entered his brain. A virtual universe spread around him as everything else went dark for him. Ning saw 4 distinct stars that shined far away from each other. Or so he thought, but when he tried to focus on them, he realized that they were actually galaxies. Ning wanted the vision to expand and it did. Suddenly, he saw the massive galaxy expand open with billions upon billions of stars, nebulous gases covering space, and a massive dark sphere at the center of it all. Ning was surprised to find out that he knew every single star and could tell where it was, but somehow only a few of them had names. "Do the stars not have names?" Ning asked. As far as he remembered, all the stars were named back on Earth. "Wait, you mean like the will of the star?" Ning asked. "I see," Ning said. "So that means every single one of these stars with a name contains at least a planet with inhabitants in it." "I understand," Ning said. "I will have to look through this more later on. For now, let's continue buying stuff." Ning bought extra storage for his storage skill. He improved his super flight skill to have a very high speed without any energy expenditure. He improved his radiation absorption skill, which gave him increased physical strength as a result of absorbing radiation from the stars to 17%. That was a great improvement from the 2% he had previously. Ning then bought automatic absorption skills for all the different energies he had come into contact with. Suddenly, he started absorbing the different energies in the air. However, just having the energy wasn't enough. He also needed to know about them, so he bought information regarding how the different energies worked. Ning then thought through and bought a bunch of information about the plants and animals that would appear all over the different galaxies. There were too many of them, so he couldn't buy the highest tier version of all, but he knew just about enough to be the most knowledgeable man in the different galaxies. Ning wanted to buy a skill that would allow him to read other beings' minds, but decided not to. He didn't want to ruin people for himself. Ning bought a healing skill that used his energy to heal people. It was the exact skill that his system used, but this one he could use without asking the system to do it. It was like his teleportation skill. Aside from that, he also bought a skill to get rid of poisons, venoms, and any other toxins. Just as he was about to wish for something else, a notification appeared in his mind. Ning lost his train of thought and asked the system, "Wait, why?" "Oh, I thought it was gone for good," Ning said. "I should have known." Ning opened up his status and checked the list again. Something was weird about it this time. Status name: Ning Ruigong Energy, 1.52 sextillion. Separated energy heat energy, 20 trillion sound energy, 22 trillion. Kinetic energy, 218 trillion electrical energy, 10 trillion. Chi energy, 55 quintillion ether energy, 15 quintillion. Mana energy, 21 quintillion magicule energy, 64 quintillion. Willpower energy, 22 quintillion spiritual energy, 12 quintillion. Life force energy, 66 quintillion aura energy, 18 quintillion. Essence energy, 32 quintillion chakra energy, 6 quintillion. Skill. Wait, the numbers don't add up, Ning said. What happened to the rest of the energy? The system is made up of pure energy? Ning asked. Yes, the system said. Right, I forgot to ask you, Ning said. Tell me more about what Genesis was, or what the system is. For some reason, the system made no quips about needing to hide information or him not being eligible to learn it and explained everything. Genesis, as per Ning's guess, was a will of the galaxy they were currently in. He was to this galaxy what Alexis was to Vilmore. Only, because of how much energy he had from being a will of a galaxy, it had a far better intellect than Alexis. Also, unlike Alexis, it didn't bother with caring for human life and killed people without care. Wills needed three things to exist. Existence of souls within or around the celestial body, enough energy above a certain threshold, and the existence of an origin that constantly spewed out energy into the world. Humans and other beings with souls lived all around the myriad planets in the galaxy, so that requirement was fulfilled. As a galaxy, it was obvious to have very high energy too. Finally, the thing that made or broke the will manifestation, the origin, also existed in this galaxy. As such, many years ago, Genesis came into existence. At first, he was a naive little creature that didn't understand anything. However, slowly, he learned more and more. He felt himself change, grow. Then, he got into contact with other wills around the various galaxies in the universe and learned more. Then, one day, he learned about systems. As he got interested and learned more, he found out that as long as he had enough energy, he could create systems too. The more energy he used, the more powerful the system would be. When he learned that, Genesis searched for more information and came across knowledge about the energy system. The original system. Using that as an inspiration, Genesis used all the energy he had gathered throughout the years to create this one system. So much energy was wasted during the creation of this system, but when it was finally formed, it was worth it. Genesis didn't even bother showing the system to his friends and immediately decided to see how it worked. So, he went on to find people for his system. However, it was hard to decide exactly who to choose, so, he decided to keep the competition. Perhaps, if he had waited for a while longer, Genesis would have become strong enough to fight the eyeball and not have a difficult time winning against him. Perhaps if he had talked with his friends first, he would have realized that he needed to be careful how he advertised the new system, and they might have told him a more secure way to install the system into a random person's soul. However, Genesis didn't do either of that as he was hasty, and in his haste, he made the mistake that led to his death by being absorbed by Ning. Ning then also absorbed his creation as that was something that the system deemed necessary. In the end, the only creation of his that remained standing was this planet that he made. Ning's eyes were wide as he finally learned a truth that he had been wanting to learn for a very long time. So, the people that make the systems, they are all will manifestations of galaxies? He asked. There are 4 different types of will that can manifesto: planetary will, constellation will, galactic will, and universal will. They all have wills. Wait, constellations? What exactly does that entail? Ning asked. Stars usually do not have enough energy for their size to create a will. However, sometimes, a group of stars, if they are near to each other, create a collective will and can manifest themselves if they have life close by. Those wills are considered as constellation wills. How much energy do these wills have? Ning asked. He couldn't imagine a universal will with the power of billions of galaxies worth of energy. Wills normally aren't very strong when compared to what they are the will of. Most of the time, the energy they can use is a fraction of what comes out through the origin. So instead of the size of the celestial body, it is the amount of time that determines the power of the will. Ning nodded. Genesis had just created the system with the power he got from the origin, so that was the reason why he was so strong. That eyeball. Ning thought. Genesis called it a constellation. Does that mean it was a will too? When Ning remembered back to the conversation he heard between the two, it became clear that the eyeball that Bellatrix had managed to summon was actually a constellation will. Ning couldn't help but sweat. What would have happened to Nova had Bellatrix not told the will to kill her instead? Ning quickly shook his head free of the thought and thought of other questions to ask. So, those are all? Ning asked. Nothing else? No nebula or giant comets and asteroid, or hell, even black holes? A nebula is way too sparse to have enough energy to form even the most primitive of will. Comets and asteroids are too small and mostly lacking in energy. Black holes do not have energies of their own to form a will. That final line was a little confusing to Ning. Black holes don't have energies of their own. What is that supposed to mean? He asked. You do not have enough authority to learn more about black holes. Whoa, we're doing that again? Ning asked, but the system stayed quiet. Okay, then do these beings make systems then? Ning asked. Yes. Mostly galactic wills and universal wills. But constellation wills can sometimes come together to form a collective system. But not all of them do that, do they? Ning asked. No. Ning nodded as he thought of other things to ask. Right, you disabled yourself to protect me, right? He asked. No, the system was disabled to give you time to get in contact with the will, since that was the only way to get rid of it. Wait, so was I never in any danger? Ning asked with a surprised expression. I was sure I would be captured and experimented on and stuff. No, you were in danger. And you let me come here anyway? With no protection to boot, Ning said. You were cautioned to not absorb energy here. That is all the protection you needed. What do you mean? Ning asked. With the system disabled and you not absorbing any energy, you were never in any danger of being caught. Ning was confused. What does not absorbing energy have to do with being in danger? I have been curious about this for a while, but I just can't understand, he said. When the host of the energy system takes an energy that belongs to another will, there establishes a certain connection between the two that allows access for the will to see and hear your thoughts and feelings. They can read our thoughts? Ning asked with a shocked face. Wait, so had I absorbed energy here, I would have been read like an open book. Is that what you're saying? Yes. There is nothing you can do aside from using up all the energy if you wanted to get rid of the intrusion in your mind. Does that mean everyone here had their thoughts read by Genesis? Ning asked. No, it is impossible to create said connection with someone that has a soul. Only beings with no soul are read by the different wills. So every will could read my mind if I absorbed energy that belonged to them, huh? Then even Alexis must have. Wait, no, she did my mind. Wait, was that why she could read my mind the entire time? Ning asked. Yes. Whoa, so that means she could hear everything I thought from the very beginning, Ning thought. Is that why Alexis could control those ether horses too? Is that the same reason why Genesis could control these humans and monsters that had no soul? Yes, beings with no soul can only have their thoughts and feelings read and heard. Beings with no soul and no intelligence can have their thoughts and feelings controlled as well. Holy shit. It will really sounds way too strong now, Ning thought. So I really could have been in danger here then, Ning asked. Do you have some sort of escape plan if I was ever caught by Genesis? No, the only thing we can do is send out a beacon and hope another will interferes and rescues us, or another host hears the beacon and decides to come. And that chance is almost nil, isn't it? Ning asked and sighed. He hadn't realized just how close he was to being caught and forever kept as someone's pet. Ning got his thoughts free of the fact that he had almost been captured for eternity and started thinking of what else he could do now. He opened his status again to see that he indeed had 1.5 sextillion energy and it wasn't leaking anymore. He remembered the system saying that he needed a bit more than 3 sextillion energy to reach Kumiya. Which meant if he used the energy he had right now, he would make it about halfway there. This was going to be a giant leap on his journey and he couldn't wait. Ning created a portal for everyone to come back to the city. Daryl, Saf, Drake, Toron, and Luna returned to the city where Nova was and Ning spoke to them. I killed Genesis, he told them, and his system is gone too. The group couldn't believe it at first, but when Genesis didn't return at all, they were certain Ning was telling the truth. Well, who is going to help us now then? Toron asked. I am, Ning said. You, how? Daryl asked. I am planning to leave this place, and I am willing to take you guys with me if you want to, Ning said. Oh, you can? Drake was surprised. Well, I guess we should hurry up and leave then. Yeah, let's go, Saf said. I don't like this place, Luna said. What are you waiting for, little worm? Daryl asked. Toron sighed in relief. Ning gave a wry smile and looked toward Nova who was starting to get a little sad. What's wrong? Saf asked. Are you not willing to go? She can't, Ning said. She needs to stay here so that she doesn't hurt more people accidentally. I have given her some help, but it will take a long time before she is capable of controlling her powers. What? Does that mean she will stay here alone? You can't do that, Daryl shouted. I'm afraid I have no other choices, Ning said, unless you have some idea. Daryl couldn't think of anything aside from a single one. I will stay with her then. All of the people in the group were surprised. What? Daryl asked. I'm a dragon, so I doubt I would be welcomed wherever I am going. Ning quickly confirmed with the system and said, the next planet I am going to does have dragons, but they don't use mana there but spiritual energy. See, I wouldn't know what to do without mana, Daryl said. Well, Drake spoke. I wouldn't know what to do without life force either. Only in this place can I live comfortably. You too? Ning asked Drake. I'm used to being alone anyway, Drake shrugged. This time, I will have friends. Now that I think about it, Luna spoke up. I won't be able to do anything without mana either. Not to mention, I will stand out in a group of humans. Ning looked at her long ears and sighed. People would indeed hate on her if they hadn't seen her before. Well, Ion 1 had him going, Toron said. I should be able to fit in any place. All I need is a power source after all. Mine is running out. Ning thought for a moment and brought out something the size of his fist. It was a piece of rock that was full of energy. Will this work? He asked to Toron. Toron looked at the stone and before he could even say anything, Daryl shouted, Mana stone. Yes, Ning said. It's from the stone golem we had to fight a few days ago. This would work amazingly, Toron said and took the stone. A portion of his nanosuit spilled out from his hands and devoured the mana stone in a matter of seconds. I'm back to full again, he said. Ning smiled and turned around to look at Safandra. I would like to leave as well, she said with an apologetic tone. Will Little Blue be fine? The planet we are going to doesn't have spirits, Ning said. It's fine, Saf said. She thrives on spiritual energy after all. Oh, Ning said. I didn't know that. He then turned around to the rest of the group. It's settled then. Me, him, and Saf will be the ones to leave, while Drake, Nova, Daryl, and Luna will stay behind, he said. Everyone else nodded. Well, let us have a farewell party then, Ning said and turned around to the soulless humans that walked around them doing their mindless business. Ning quickly ordered them to prepare a feast for them, which they did without question. The group laughed, talked, and had fun in general. The party lasted for nearly 3 days as they lived the time of their life. Even Nova smiled gleefully now that most of her problems were solved. While the rest of them enjoyed their time, unbeknownst to them, something happened to the planet they were on. Planet Genesis was not a normal planet. After all, it was created by a galactic will. However, that wasn't what was the most unique case on this planet. There were many planets that were created by galactic and even universal wills. The thing that made it special was that this was the planet where the conversion system was absorbed, and subsequently leaked into the atmosphere of the planet. The amount of energy Ning absorbed and used was minuscule when compared to the energy that went into making the system. Now, all of that energy had gathered on the planet and absorbed by it. Slowly, due to the excess of energy, a will was forming on the planet. There wasn't enough time for it to manifest, nor were there enough souls. But it was still influenced by what appeared on its surface. A being without a soul, but with intelligence that had absorbed its energy. The newly formed child-like will was influenced by what Ning was thinking and feeling at the moment. Aside from that, since the will was formed of energy that was once Genesis, it was also influenced by Genesis thoughts for the last few days. Happiness. Humans should be happy, it understood. Variety. There should be various types of humans and beings. Escape. If someone is hurt or lonely, the planet should take them in. Tasks. It should make the humans do stuff. The cities had their powers suppressed. That meant fighting in the cities was not allowed. Similar ideas and thoughts constantly influenced the will of the planet while an origin opened up close by. It would take a few years, but the different types of energies on the planet would be taken in and exchanged for the energy that should be the most prevalent based on the souls that existed here. 3 out of 6 of the souls used mana, so mana would go on to be the most prevalent power on this planet. At the same time, since they were here when it happened, the people that stayed would also have their power source changed to mana. As time goes by, the planet would finally do what it believed it was meant to do. It would call people from all over the galaxy to give them a new chance in life. On this planet, they would get to have fun and do tasks given to them by the soulless people. They would live in cities where fighting was physically impossible. Copying both what Genesis tried to do the last few days, and what Ning had, everyone who came to the planet would have a system-line power of their own where they could check their progress. The people that came would stay, form their own culture, and form their own kingdoms. Many stories would take place on this planet itself. As for what the stories were, that was a question for another time. After the party was over and they were all rested, Ning and the rest got together for a final goodbye before they left. "I guess it is time we leave," Ning said to the group, and everyone nodded. Ning turned around outside the gate and gave the order, "Open the portal to planet Nullor." "Where are we?" Toron asked. Ning, Safandra, and Toron stood on top of a tall mountain looking down at a valley below. "We should be in a small village called Gornavu, or at least close to it. That should be the village down there," he pointed below. They stood on a plateau that looked over a beautiful scenic view of mountains that went on forever. This was an area with multiple mountains that spanned over multiple mountain ranges, between which lay many valleys that were littered with villages. Little Blue flew through the air, chirping as she did so. Ning almost thought he could understand the language, but he didn't. That just went to tell him that she wasn't actually speaking. "Well, someone's happy," Ning said as he looked at her. "Well, she's just glad to be in a place where spiritual energy is available," Saf said. She was so downtrodden the last few days due to not being outside that energyless city. Ning nodded when he heard her. Spiritual energy, he could feel it too, and his body was already absorbing it since he had bought some of the best auto-absorption techniques out there. "So what's the plan?" Toron asked. "Well, for now, let us just go down there and see what they have," Ning said. "No, not right now. I meant what's the overall plan," Toron said. "You mentioned something about a futuristic society passing by here, right? Do they live close by?" "Well, not exactly close, but yes. There are some that are capable of intragalactic travel and maybe even intergalactic travel. We will have to catch a flight with them if we want to leave," Ning said. "Will it be anytime?" Toron asked. No, but I will have an idea when it is," Ning said. "No point on dallying for that. Let us go and meet the new people," Saf said. "I haven't seen people in a long time." She turned to Ning and Toron and explained. "I meant people who aren't trying to kill me, I guess." Ning shrugged and hovered. He put forth a hand to take Saf with her, but to his surprise, she flew on her own and gave a smirk. "I didn't know you could fly," he said. "You don't know what I can do," Saf said. That was true. After all, right before they were meant to fight, the White Room was destroyed and they were all forced to end the competition. One thing led to another, and Ning never really learned what her powers were. However, now that he could learn it, he decided not to. It was sometimes better to be surprised. Boosters appeared all around Terran's calf from the suit and he flew off too. Together, the 3 of them went down to the village in a matter of minutes. Before entering, Ning handed them a bunch of clothes. "These are planet-appropriate clothes. Anything else and you will stick out like a sore thumb," Ning explained. He remembered the time when his cultivator robe had him look foreign back in Vilmore when he had arrived there after they all started wearing suits and ties. Ning gave them simple medieval clothes to wear. Toron got shirts and trousers, while Safandra got a simple dress. I will give you some priv. Safandra suddenly brought up a wall from the ground and covered herself from all sides before changing her clothes. We should go. Toron created a similar barrier with his nanosuit and he too started changing right there. Ning walked towards the back of the tree while not being able to believe what had just happened. How the hell am I the normal person here? He grumbled the whole way through as he finished changing the clothes. He walked back out in the drag gray and brown clothes and watched the other two dress in similar clothes. However, there was something there that stuck out quite a lot. Your hair is too vibrant. I hope that won't be a problem, Ning said. Do you want me to help you with it? I can get you some dye. We're in a place full of spiritual energy, aren't we? Safandra asked. Yes, Ning said. Then you guys are going to stick out for having non-colored hair, Safandra said. Well, him not so much, but you will stick out. Why? Ning asked and quickly went through the information in his brain that he had bought but hadn't had the time to go through yet. Oh, he said when he found the information. You got it? She asked. Yes, Ning said. I didn't know your hair color changed when you became a bond forger. Yes, since you have powers, you should get your hair changed to red, Saf said. Ning quickly learned more about the powers that were granted with spiritual energy. With spiritual energy, you became a bond forger, more commonly known as a summoner. Depending on the strength of the bond you could forge with whatever you summoned, it would influence on the leverage you had with the summoned being. From weak to strong, the colors of the hair followed the colors on a rainbow. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and finally violet. The bond started off weak with red and got stronger until it ended with violet. This meant that Safandra's bond with Little Blue was one of the strongest bonds out there. Just because the bond was strong, it didn't mean what was summoned was strong. However, it usually was a good indication of one's summoning capabilities. Bellatrix did summon an entire constellation with blonde hair, so it really isn't reliant on the bond's color, he thought. He looked back at Safandra and asked, do you really not want to hide that violet hair? It should be somewhat of a legend to these people. Why should I? Safandra asked. I worked hard to get this level. I am not going to hide who I am. If you say so, Ning said and looked at his own hair color. I should get some red hair then. Ning's hair turned scarlet all of a sudden. Whoa! What sort of magic are you doing here? Sharon asked at the immediate change in hair color. Ning smiled and let them figure it out on their own. His hair was now true red, just like Daryl's was. Her hair was his inspiration after all. Ning touched his hair for a while and asked, any idea why it didn't change color on its own? Well, I do have an idea, Safandra said. Go on. Ning listened carefully. Usually, people's ability to collect spiritual energy is dormant, and it is only after their first summoning that they usually get their hair color change. Usually, we say that people who have changed their hair color have finally managed to go on their spiritual journey. After all, that is when they truly start collecting spiritual energy. However, you collected it before even summoning anything, so my theory is that it isn't the spiritual journey's inception that changes your hair color, but rather the summoning and bond, Saf said. Well, that does seem to be right, Ning said as he went through the information in his head. Can we just get on with it already? Toron said while rolling his eyes. Right, sorry, Ning apologized. Let's go. The three of them walked towards the village. Young children played around the open fields. They chased each other, while Ning used his spiritual analysis on them. Dormant, it read. They haven't summoned yet then, Ning thought. He wondered if he should summon and see if his hair color would change. A farmer that was digging in the fields suddenly looked up at them. Who are ya? He asked. We're some travelers that came here to see the beauty of the mountains, Ning said. Ya got red, air. Mind showing me some summonings? The man asked. Ning didn't know what to say. To begin with, he didn't even know how summoning worked, and he didn't have time to go read up on it in his mind. Mind helping me here a bit? Ning asked softly. Help you with what? What are you two talking about? Toron asked. You understand that stupid-sounding language? Safandra asked. What? You don't understand? Ning asked with a surprised expression. He had thought that Genesis had given them as amazing language skills as he had, but it turned out they couldn't understand the language. Toron should be able to help, Ning thought. System, give Wendy the translations to every language on this planet. What are y'all waiting for? The farmer asked. Oh, Wendy can translate the language now, Toron said. That's new. She usually needs a lot of data to be able to process these sort of things. I gave Wendy all the data she needed, Ning said. Okay. Now only I don't understand the language, Safandra said. Ning decided to take advantage of it. Put on a mean face, Ning said. What? Saf made a confused look. That works too, Ning said. He turned back towards the farmer. I would love to show you some brother, but my young lady is tired from the trip and wants to rest. Is there any place for us to stay in the village? He asked. Well, y'all can stay in the chief's place. Just talk to, I am, the farmer said. Ning walked through the many people that stared at them, especially him. He leaned back towards Saf and asked, why are they staring at me? Shouldn't they be staring at you? I don't know, Saf said. I don't even understand the damn language. Don't worry, I will take care of that once we get to rest, Ning said and continued walking. He explained what was going on. Safandra was a rich, young lady that wanted to see the mountains. So he came here with her 2 servants to see it. Along the way, they came across some trouble and had lost all their belonging. Now, they just wanted to return back home. They reached the center of the village and waited around for someone to call the chief. The chief was an old man in his 50s with a full head of white hair and a long beard. He walked with a cane despite looking physically fit. When he saw the 3 newcomers, his eyes moved from Toron to Saf to Ning without stopping. When it reached Ning, it lingered for a second as a hint of surprise appeared on his face. A red summoner. I didn't think I would see one today, the village chief spoke. Hello, Ning said. I am Ning. This is Toron, and this is our young lady Safandra. Young lady? The village chief asked. She must be rich then? Not very much, but they are considered rich, Ning said. Why isn't your little miss speaking? Are we too poor to talk to? The chief asked. My young lady doesn't understand the language here. She has only learned the language from the West, Ning said. This stupid, ain't it? The village chief asked. Ya should try and learn the language of the place ya are about to visit. Ning nodded and said nothing. Is ya heir died, young man? The village chief asked. No, Ning said without hesitation. Well, then why is your young lady's heir died? The village chief asked. Sorry, Ning asked. That color, the village chief said. Ya shouldn't try to copy the blue hair of the legends. And if ya want to, make sure it's actually blue. Not some stupid purple. Blue, the village chief said. What is he saying? Safandra asked after noticing the old man look at her multiple times while talking in a language she just couldn't understand. He's saying you should dye your hair color right, Toron translated. He thinks your color isn't natural. What? It most definitely is, Safandra said angrily. Ning thought for a moment and quickly learned about the history of this land for a moment. Oh, he said with a surprised expression. It seems to the general public that the greatest hair color you can reach is blue. They have no idea about indigo or violet. As such, they think you have dyed your hair. Ning was invited into the chief's house like an honored guest. The chief was respectful to Toron and Saf too, but not as much as he was to Ning. Ning was happy that he decided to dye his hair red, or who knew what would have happened. The villagers asked for him to show them how to summon stuff, but Ning told them he would do it tomorrow. After all, he had no idea how any of it worked, so he planned on thoroughly learning about it tonight. In the chief's house, they were given 2 separate rooms. One for him and Toron, while the other one was for Saf. Just because the chief wasn't impressed by her didn't mean he wanted to embarrass a young lady from a rich house. Who knew what sort of tragedy would befall him if he decided to anger such a person? Around evening time, the old man called them for dinner and treated them in some of the finest food they had. Which, unfortunately, was nowhere near as good as what they had just eaten for 3 days in a row for their party. Still, they ate happily. The chief asked a lot of questions about the outside world, which Ning had to go through his mind every time to find an answer. When he started asking questions about summoning, that was when Ning decided to stop the conversation. I'm sorry, the old man said. Y'all muse be bothered with ma talk about summoning. It's fine, Ning said. We're just tired for today, that's all. I understand, the chief said. It's just that my daughter is leaving for summoning school in a few days, and I'm just worried for her. Your daughter? Ning asked curiously. The old man hadn't introduced any daughter of her. Where is she? She's out helping a friend right now, but she should be returning soon, the chief said. I see, Ning said. We will see what I can do.
God bless y'all, the chief said, and the three of them returned back to their room.
How long are we staying here? Toron asked. Until tomorrow afternoon, Ning said. But you promised to teach the villagers about summoning. Will you be able to do that in that short time? Toron asked. Besides, you don't even know about summoning. I will learn tonight, and ask Safandra for some help, Ning said. Ning then went into his mind and started learning about everything that he could about the planet, the people, and the power. The planet Nullor was about 80% water, while the lands were almost all scattered around the world as a bunch of island. As such, there was no specific continent. The people had different culture from island to island, but due to the improvement in the travel sector, that was starting to become a problem less and less. They were currently on the quadrant of the planet where the summoning circle was least prevalent due to the influence of the Rising Flame Empire, who didn't like the influence of the summoning circle on their people. Ning was too far away in a remote village to have either of these two things bother him. As for the people side of things, fortunately, there wasn't anything weird about this world. Ning then started learning about bond forging, or rather just one aspect of it, summoning. When summoning, you used your spiritual energy to call for something to come to your place. To make them come, you had to offer something in exchange for taking something. Ning was a little confused about this part, so he decided to ask Safandra the next morning. After a while, he felt quite tired too, so he fell asleep too. The next morning, he found Safandra and went out to the fields to practice summoning. Alright, tell me exactly what to do based on your experience, Ning said. Don't fret too much. You have spiritual energy, so you will do just fine, Safandra said. Now, focus and try to touch your spiritual energy. Feeling your energy is the first step. Feeling my spiritual energy? Ning thought and closed his eyes to focus fully on himself. Not even a second later, he thought he felt something. I think I can feel it, Ning said. Nonsense, Safandra said. No one can do it that fast. Keep trying, you will know. Ning thought she was correct, so he continued trying to feel it, but every time he thought he did it. Wait a minute, he thought. My new talent must be working already. I think I did it, he said. What's the next step? Well, if you did it, then try to use your spiritual energy next. When you use it, you will find yourself connected to different beings. Try and call them, she said. Okay, Ning said and tried to use what he had felt before. Suddenly, he found himself in a sea of darkness and he was only surrounded by specks of white light all around him. He looked at the lights for a while and wondered if they were stars. However, they were too close to him to be stars. So, he tried to reach for the white light and grabbed one of it. He waited for a while, but he didn't know what to do with it at all. So, in the end, he let go of the white light and found himself back in his body. Whoa, he said. What happened? Safandra asked. I did what you said, and I found myself in a dark place searching for something, Ning said. But I don't know what to do after that. I know I'm supposed to make a bond, but what sort of bond? Whoa, you did that in a split second. Just how talented are you? Safandra asked. Split second. I was there for a good minute, Ning said. It's your mind, she said. Things in your mind happen faster than in real. You were there for only a split second. Okay, so what next? He asked. Did you see the bright specks of light? Safandra asked. Yes, I did see them. I caught one too, Ning said. Good, but this time, try to catch the one that is the brightest, Safandra said. Okay, and? Ning asked. Then you make the bond, Safandra said proudly. How? That's why I called you here in the first place, Ning said. It's just a bond. You say you will give them something, and in exchange, you ask for something in return, Safandra said. Like, I need examples. I've never done it before, you remember? Ning said. The most common bond to form is exchanging spiritual energy. When you call for something, promise them that you will let them eat a part of your spiritual energy, and in exchange, they have to come here, Safandra said. That's it? Ning asked. Well, it's not that easy. Try it, Safandra said. Oh, and don't forget to put the clause where you are allowed to control all of its action. That is very important. Oh, all right, Ning said and closed his eyes to go back to that sea of darkness. He saw the many specks of light and saw a few that glittered brightly. Since this was just a simple training exercise, he decided to go for a random one. Ning caught whatever was closest and thought about what bond to make exactly. Then he spoke in his heart of hearts. Come to where I am and be controlled by me. In exchange, you will get to take half of my spiritual energy. Suddenly, the darkness broke through and bright white light appeared in front of him as a summoning circle appeared in front of him. Whoa, you did it! Safandra shouted and stepped away from the area. In the summoning circle appeared a white horse with a flaming mane and tail. Its torso alone was about as tall as Ning. The rest of the horse was even taller. That should at least be a rank 3 spiritual beast, Safandra said. Let me see, Ning said and used his analysis skill to check. It is indeed rank 3. Well, that's amazing for a first-timer, you did great, she said. Well, I did choose it randomly, Ning thought. Come here, he told the horse which neighed and moved towards him. Ning pets him along its neck and mane without any fear of the fire. The horse did nothing and let him pet it some more. So, what can it do? Safandra asked. Well, Ning thought for a moment and a bunch of information came to his mind. Whoa, I know everything about it. Of course you do. You created a bond, didn't you? Saf said. So they can never hide their abilities from us? Ning asked. They can, but they usually have to mention it when you create a pact, Safandra said. Most beasts don't care and just go along with whatever you ask. I see, Ning said. A few of the villagers came by to see his horse after someone spread the news, and soon Ning was parading it around the village. The people looked at him in surprise and even Toron gave a look that said he was impressed. Of course, he was. Ning himself was impressed too. The people shouted in excitement and glee, while some ran away in fear and terror. The chief brought out his daughter and showed her to Ning. The girl was barely 12 years old and was on the verge of becoming a summoner as well. Ning promised to teach her what he knew and continued with the parade. After showing around the horse for a while, it was time to send it back. To send it back, I just have to tell it the pact is done, right? Ning asked. Yes, Safandra said. Ning nodded and talked to the horse. It's about time you return. A white light flashed below the horse and in the next moment, it disappeared. That was a good practice, Ning said. Let me go teach the girl again. After that, we will leave for a city in the west. How far is it? She asked. A few 100 kilometers from here, Ning said. It's an oceanside city, so it's a lot more developed than this place. All right, I will prepare, Safandra said and left. Ning went to find the village chief and met his daughter named Hannah. He started teaching her not long after and taught her how to summon. She couldn't do it by the time they left, but Ning was sure she would be successful after she went to the summoner's school. The way out of the city was a small road that went in between the mountains to the next village. After that, there was another similar road to go out, because they could all fly away. It was fast, but they still only managed to make about 2 villages over before the sun came down. Ning was perfectly capable of traveling at the night too, but Safandra quickly became tired, so they had to find a place to stay again. This village had a tavern, so it became easier for them. He created some pearls to buy themselves 3 different rooms. This wasn't any pearl, but rather a spiritual pearl. It was akin to spirit stones from Kumiya and contained a significant amount of spiritual energy. The only difference was that when left in the ocean water for a significant amount of time, the pearl could be recharged with spiritual energy which people cared for a lot. As a result, the value of spiritual pearl with spiritual energy was twice as much as spiritual pearl that were duds. The only way to harvest them was through the spiritual oyster, so they were considered one of the most important beasts on this planet. The 3 of them rested for a whole night before taking off in the morning. As they walked further and further west, the civilization got more and more urban. And finally, after 3 days of walking, they reached the oceanside city known as Toron City. Carts drawn by horses, and sometimes spirit beasts rolled by as Ning, Saf, and Toron made their way to a tavern. Man, this is some archaic society, Toron commented. I expect better things the closer we get to modern civilization, but it still is worse than my worst expectations. This isn't that different from where I come from, Saf said. Toron City had houses made up of stones and woods. The city was located on the southern slopes of the mountain that went down to a bay area where the dock was. Most of the wealthy folks lived in the bay area where it was flat land. Ning and the rest were in that area and found themselves a tavern to stay in. They ate some food and decided to look for various stuff to buy around the city. They first went to a clothing store to buy some of the latest fashion clothes that didn't make them look like country bumpkins. Safandra got herself a bunch of violet clothes to match her hair, while Ning and Toron didn't really care much for colors and only cared for the design. After changing into their new outfits, they went around the city and Ning made a particular choice to look for the people's hair color. There was plenty of red, a few oranges, and very rarely were there yellow hair. Ning continued looking throughout the crowd when they came across a wide building with a recognizable name on its board. The Summoning Circle. Oh, it's the guild, Ning said. He had learned a bit about the Summoning Circle and knew that it was akin to guilds from Kumia or the Ether Tower from Vilmore. We should get registered here. I think there are a lot of benefits to becoming one, Ning said. Sure, the other two said, and the three of them went inside. The inside of the building was a lot of yellow and green. There were stone pillars in the center that supported the entire building. Around the room, there were a bunch of tables and chairs scattered around where people stayed to eat. Ning walked by a massive board and saw a bunch of stuff written on it. Kill the rank 2 hybrid hyena that is terrorizing Yorkville, 10 full pearls. Capture a cub of blurred tiger in the eastern forest, 12 full pearls. Help Gerald fend off his farm. It didn't take long for Ning to realize that this was a mission board. The three of them made their way to the clerk and told them what they were here for. All three of you? The girl asked with a weird expression. Yes, Ning said. The girl turned towards Toron and asked, can you even summon? Ning realized what his mistake was. Of course, the summoning circle only took in those who could summon. Is there no way for someone who can't summon to join? Ning asked. No, that is the most important requirement to join, the clerk said. Well, I guess I'm out then, Toron said. To begin with, he wasn't really interested in joining the circle anyway. All he wanted was to spend his time in leisure and wait for any spaceship to pass by so they could hitch a ride. Guess, I'm out as well then, Safandra said from the side after hearing the conversation. What? Why are you out? Ning asked. I can't summon, she said. You can't summon? Ning asked with a confused look. Saf shook her head. Not anymore, she said. What? Why? Ning asked. I don't have any spiritual energy anymore and I can't gather any. So I'm stuck without being able to summon now, she said. Are you injured or something? Ning asked her. No, it's just something I did to myself. You don't have to worry about it, she said. Ning wanted to say more, but the clerk spoke up. Are you joining or not? She asked. Yes, I'm joining, Ning said and filled in a bunch of information on the sheet of paper. All right, go through there and have your hair washed, the clerk said. My hair washed? Why? Ning asked. To make sure you are not cheating your way in. We have to make sure you didn't just dye your hair, the clerk said. Oh, okay, Ning said. Since he had already summoned something, he didn't need to worry about anything. His hair had to have already changed to red after all. I will see you guys in a bit. Sit around, Ning said and took the path the clerk showed him. He reached the back of the building in an open area where one person was waiting for people to come to visit him. Ning went to the man and told him he was here to get his hair washed. The man made him sit down and poured some water as well as some ingredients on his hair. As he expected, Ning went to someone that washed his hair and realized that it was in fact not dyed. Had it been dyed, his hair would have made the water red. You're good to go, the man said and sent him to another location off to the side where a man was teaching a bunch of teenagers about summoning. Hello, I'm here to get tested for the registration, Ning told the man with the gray hair. The man looked aside from the kids and toward Ning, who didn't look much older than a teenager. His body was forever young after all. You can summon, can you? The man asked. Yes, Ning said and nodded. Good, give a demonstration to these young people then, the man said. Ning nodded and closed his eyes and tried to feel his spiritual energy. The moment he did, he used it, and suddenly, he found himself back in the sea of darkness all around him. He looked around for the closest thing he could find and grabbed it. Come and be controlled by me. Instead, I shall give you half of my spiritual energy. The bond was forged instantly. When Ning opened his eyes, there was a summoning circle in front of him that appeared out of nowhere. Since he had formed a bond, the beast he had bonded to would appear here. After a second, a spirit beast appeared in front of Ning and the other children. A turtle. It was a green turtle with a jade-like head and had nothing special about it. The man looked at the beast and then back to Ning. A rank 2 beast, huh? Not bad, he said. The man somehow recognized Ning's beast faster than Ning did his own. While he had the talent, it didn't stand in front of the man's years-long experience. Control the beast a bit, the man said. Ning nodded and did what he was told. Turtle, Throw out the water, he ordered. The tern suddenly opened its mouth and sent a gush of water towards a nearby tree and shook it so hard that the tree nearly fell down. Create a water bubble, Ning shouted. The turtle once again sent out water, but this time the water gathered around Ning like a barrier. Send out, enough, the man said. You've passed. Oh, thank you, Ning said. So I can send him back? The man nodded. You can leave now, Ning said. The turtle surprisingly made a saddened face, but it was bonded to do whatever Ning told. As such, a circle appeared below its feet and the turtle disappeared. The man quickly took out a note and wrote something on it. Hand this to the clerk, he said and gave it to Ning. Thank you, Ning said and left the area. He went back inside and found Saf and Toron to have already sat down by a large table and seemed to have ordered something. He wondered if Saf made the order using what little words she had learned in the last few days or if it was Toron, whose AI, Wendy, could easily translate the language for him. Whatever it was, they were self-sufficient and Ning liked that. He didn't want to chauffeur them everywhere as that would be very annoying. Ning went to the clerk and handed her the slip of paper he had gotten from the old man. Rank 2, huh? Not bad for a young man like you, the clerk said as she prepared something. Ning waited and she finally handed it to him. His summoner's card. Now he too was part of the summoning circle. While the summoning circle wasn't that big in this corner of the world, it would someday be very useful for him. You can only accept one quest at a time. The quest you accept cannot be higher than your own rank. And finally, you will have to pay a fee if you take the quest and do not complete it in the given time. You can read the rest of the rules next to the quest board. If you like a quest you want to take, just bring it here and I will approve of it, the clerk said. Thank you, Ning said and took his summoner's card. The info on the card had his name, age, sex, and rank. Should I have summoned something better for my rank? He wondered, but he didn't really find that necessary. But, just in case, he asked the clerk. If I ever do manage to summon a higher-ranked spirit beast, what should I do? He asked. You can just take an exam at a certain price. It's all written in the rules over there, the clerk said as she pointed back to the quest board. Thank you, Ning said again and finally left. He went to the table where Saf and Toron were sitting and sat down on the empty seat next to them. Hey, look, I did it, Ning said and showed them the card. Let me see, Toron said and snatched the card. A blue light emerged from his eyes and went over the entire card. Ning quickly snatched it back and tried to see if there was any problem with it. What did you do? He asked. I'm just scanning it just in case I want to ever replicate it, Toron said. You want to replicate the card? That, Ning thought for a moment. That should be possible. There shouldn't be too advanced technology to determine the real from the fake. There is, Toron said. The paper had trace minerals that are usually not found in the paper, under a certain wavelength of light. Toron made a bracelet out of his nanomachines and produced a purplish light and shined it over the paper. It sparkles like stars, he finished. If people don't copy that aspect, they will instantly be found out. Oh, Wendy is quite good, isn't she? Ning said to Toron. Yeah, she's the best, Toron said. So, can you replicate it? Ning asked. It will take some time. I will have to find those minerals too. If I can do that, I should be able to, Toron said. Ning could simply create some for them, but what was the point even considering Toron's hair color didn't even match? Plus, he couldn't even summon, so there was no point. Alright, sit around for a bit. I will go check out the rules of this place for a bit, Ning said and left the table again. He went to the quest board and read through the rules on the side of it. Most of the rules were normal ones that told the summoners to not summon inside buildings, to not get in the way of other summoners, and to always value the customer's life before anything. So on and so forth. Ning finished reading the rules as not much time and decided to take a quest right now. He picked up the one with the hybrid hyena since that was a rank 2 beast and returned back to the clerk. I can take this, right? He asked. Of course, the clerk said. Let me give it to you. After accepting the quest, the Ning, Saf, and Toron made their way around Toron City. They checked out the local specialties, tried out some different shoes, and overall tried to have as much fun as they could. With Ning being able to make as much money as needed, they didn't really have any problems with buying things. By the time they returned to the tavern, it was evening already. The city burned with lantern light as electricity was still not a thing here. However, the lanterns were full of the spiritual pearls which glowed when they were full. As such, The people around here didn't have much need for electricity. The lanterns were actually thick metal mesh to keep the pearls in without having them stolen. A single pearl would light up a room the same way a candle would, so most people put at least 5 pearls in the metal container for a moderate amount of light. Fancy and luxurious stores even put 20 or so pearls in each of the lanterns to make their area incredibly bright so that people would come there. These people don't use candles, huh? Toron asked as he looked around. I don't think they need to, Safandra said. Since keeping the pearls in the ocean overnight recharges them, there is no need for them to bother with candles this close to the ocean. Didn't we pass by people collecting pearls to recharge? They must make a living doing that, Ning said. Toron was surprised at how simple the solution to a problem such as darkness was for these primitive people. Back on his planet, every single thing was made up of machines that glowed. Had it not been for the aliens they had to fight, Toron was sure his planet would die on its own from all the wasted energy. Fortunately for him, the aliens brought along technology to convert any sort of power source to fit their own machine. Unfortunately, the war left his planet uninhabitable, and soon everyone died. He looked up to the stars as he reminisced about his home planet. That was when he noticed something that didn't make sense to him. Wendy, what stars are those? He asked. He knew that the planet he had come to was in a faraway solar system, but he still expected to see some stars that he recognized. Try creating a 3D model using the intensity and frequency of the light. Cross-check that with the information you have and figure out which portion of the galaxy we are in, he said. What are you doing? Ning asked after hearing Toron speak to himself. Trying to figure out which part of the galaxy we are in, Toron said. Well, you're not in your galaxy anymore, Ning said. We are 2 galaxies away from the last one. Did I not mention that before? What? Toron was surprised. What do you mean 2 galaxies away? That was when Ning explained everything about where they were exactly. They were on planet Nullor, with 2 moons, Vera and Senna, that were never in the sky at the same time. Vera was about 1/5 the size of Senna. Their sun was still just called Sun as everyone did, while their galaxy had a name, Yomire. Ning opened his star chart all around him and showed the 2 everything he could see. Toron was shocked beyond his mind to see such an intricate chart of the galaxy. What was more shocking to him was the fact that the stars and nebulas were constantly moving in the chart. Meaning, that everything they saw was real-time. Even Ning hadn't managed to catch that until now, but he had been too focused on choosing the perfect planet to go to while not getting incredibly close to the 3rd galaxy. It was around 8 p.m. when the 3 of them reached their tavern and had some quick meals before retreating to their room. Ning gave Saf some books to study in her language that taught her the history and language of Nullor. I can just do with language, Saf said. Are you planning to leave with us when the time comes? Ning asked, knowing full well what the answer was. I would like to, but no, I need to stay in a place with spiritual energy, otherwise. She didn't speak any further. Ning nodded. Toron had no connection to the unique energies aside from his ability to turn the solidified energy source into power for his nanomachines. As such, he could go to any planet and live out his life there. Because he came from a highly developed planet, he wouldn't want to stay here with all of its inconveniences. However, Safandra was different. She was a person that was in tune with spiritual energy. She was so good at it that she even had violet hair. No person like that would ever want to leave that world and go to another one where they would just be a normal person. After having a taste of the best, going to mediocre was the worst thing one could experience after all. If you do plan on staying, then you need to learn not just about their language, but their history, their culture, their tradition. I will give you these books one after another, so read up on them, Ning said. Safandra looked at the book and nodded. Thank you for this, she said. Ning nodded and was about to leave when a question came to his mind. Right, where's Little Blue? I haven't seen her around in a while. Did you unsummon her? He asked. Safandra chuckled a bit. I can't unsummon her, she said. She's just hiding. Little Blue peeked out from under Safandra's violet hair and made some bird-like chirps. Hello. Ning said. Why is she hiding? She's usually so cheerful. She's just shy around new people. Since everyone can see her here, she doesn't like being out in the open, Safandra said. Understandable, Ning said. Anyway, I will leave you be then. Good night, Little Blue. Ning remained in his room for a while until he heard the city quiet down and only the sounds of winds howling remained all around them. As an oceanside city, Tirana was very windy at the night. Once Ning thought it was time, he disappeared from his room. When he reappeared, he found himself in a deep forest from where he could barely see anything around him. He wanted to use his eyesight but decided not to. Instead, he was here to fulfill his quest, and he would do it just as a summoner would. Kill the rank 2 hybrid hyena that is terrorizing Yorkville. 10 full pearls. The hybrid hyena had been eating the cattle of the Yorkville village for a whole month now. Every other night, it would go to the village and eat what was outside. At first, the villagers simply improved the security and put up doors to stop the hyena. But the hyena was too strong for them and broke through those doors to find its prey. There was no human casualty yet, but the villagers couldn't risk it anymore. As such, they had gathered what little money they could afford and had come to the city to issue a quest. That was the quest Ning had taken for himself. This is close enough to the village. Is the hyena here? He wondered. Hybrid hyena. Ning quickly looked up information about it that was already in his mind from the many different knowledge he bought from the system. He hadn't had time to go through them all, so he had decided to go through each of them when the time came. He quickly found the information in his mind and learned it. A hybrid hyena looked like a normal hyena, but it had the body of a horse and was quite strong. Fortunately, aside from great physical strength and agility, the hyena had no other traits. Still, since this is my first time, I should be careful, he thought. He closed his eyes and touched onto his spiritual energy. Soon, he found himself back in the darkness with stars all around him. He was about to grab one of them when he stopped. He decided to use a little thing that Safandra had told him to do. Instead of catching a beast and trying to create a bond, he would tell the conditions of the bond beforehand so that the beasts could choose willingly and come toward him. It cost a loss of spiritual energy to spread the same information to multiple beasts, but it did have two benefits that normal bonding didn't have. First, you knew what beasts would agree to the bond without even touching them. Usually, you would catch a beast, state your conditions, and if the beast agreed, there was a bond. If the beast did not agree, you would have to move on to the next one and try with that one. By spreading the information all at once, you could minimize on that time. Secondly, and more importantly, giving away the condition all at once helped not only filter out the beasts that didn't want to bond, but also filter in those who could.
So, Ning spoke up. I need to kill a rank 2 hybrid hyena. Anyone that can help me find and kill the beast within the hour will get a quarter of the spiritual energy I have right now, Ning said.
He saw the brighter star move away from him. Ning didn't understand if they weren't satisfied with a quarter of his spiritual sense, or if they were just too prideful to fight a rank 2 beast. Either way, he didn't care for them and instead looked at the ones that did move towards him. Of them, Ning grabbed the beast that was the brightest and created the bond. Instantly, he was out of the darkness of the bonding space and back in the other darkness of the night. However, that didn't last long as a bright light shined with a distinct summoning circle appearing in front of him. After a moment, a beast arrived on top of the circle. It was a giant snake the size of Blue. When Ning first met him, he checked quickly and realized it was a rank 5 beast. Ning quickly checked his hair, but it was still red. How'd I create better bonds? He wondered. The snake slithered around him and waited for his order. Can you find the hyena? Ning asked. The snake stuck out its tongue and Ning got a distinct feeling that it was telling him it could. The emerald-colored snake suddenly raised its 2 antennae and searched the surrounding. After a while, it found something. You found the hyena? Ning asked. The snake affirmed it. Ning jumped on top of the snake and told it to go to the hyena. The snake slithered its way through the thick forest and only after nearly 10 minutes did it reach the location of the hyena. It had come back towards the village. No you don't, Ning said as he saw the hyena in the distance. Go kill it. But don't destroy its head. I need it for something. The snake obeyed him and moved. It moved so fast that the hyena couldn't even see it come. Before the horse-sized hyena could do anything, the snake wrapped it around its body, and its thick scales popped outwards and started completely destroying the hyena's body. Not long after, the hyena stopped crying with pain and Ning realized it was dead. When the snake loosened its grip, he saw lacerated muscles and bones all over the hyena's body. Only its head was intact. Ning ripped the head off of the hyena and let the snake eat the rest of its body, which it did in a single gulp. Since the task was done, Ning sent the snake away. The same intricate circle appeared below it as it disappeared, but, even as it did, a certain thought came to Ning's mind. Summon me again. Summon it again. Is that even possible to choose what I can or cannot summon without seeing them? Ning thought. He took the hyena's head and returned back to his room in the tavern. Once there, he started looking more into what the snake had just told him. After a bit of searching through his mind, Ning found the information he was looking for. In fact, he found more than he was looking for. First of all, it was possible to tell which beast was what in the darkness while summoning if you had once already summoned it before. Of course, the beast would have to be available for you to summon, but it did make it easy that you could clearly tell which beast you were close to if you had already bonded with it before. Ning closed his eyes and used his spiritual energy to go back into the darkness. Once there, he looked through the bright stars and tried to find the beasts that he had already brought forth before. It took him a while, but he found the turtle he had summoned this afternoon. It was a bit hard to tell at first, but once he was close, he could feel that it was the turtle. Next, he found the snake again as well. For some reason, the snake felt excited to come with him again. Finally, Ning found the flaming horse as well. Once he realized he could in fact clearly tell which beast was which after summoning them once, he let go of the darkness and was back on the bed. That is convenient, Ning thought. He continued reading and learned a little more about summoning than what he had learned. Apparently, you could summon a beast if you drew a summoning circle that was the exact same as the summoning circle that would appear when the beast came through. Of course, even then the beast would have to accept your offer and create a bond, but just being able to summon exactly what you wanted without having ever seen the beast before was already good enough. As he read that, Ning went on a tangent and read about the summoning circles. From what he learned, summoning circles could not just be used to bring forth a certain beast, but also any beast from a specific group of beasts. If you had enough knowledge about the summoning circle, you could draw one to summon a beast exactly to your needs. If you wanted a beast that was physically strong, you could draw a summoning circle that only summoned beasts with amazing physical strength. If you wanted a beast that could use fire, you could draw a summoning circle that only summoned beasts that could use fire. As long as you knew enough about the circles and were talented enough to know exactly what to draw, you could get any sort of beasts you wanted. Ning bought some information on the summoning circles, but there was too much information on it and it was already too late at night. So, he decided to stop learning and went to sleep. He woke up early in the morning and freshened up before going to Safandra's and Taran's room. Toron wasn't in his room, and Safandra still wanted to sleep. Apparently, she had spent the entire night reading the book he had given her and only fell asleep at dawn. "All right, keep sleeping," Ning said and went down to get some food. Toron was in the tavern eating already, so Ning grabbed a seat and started eating as well. Toron asked a bunch of questions about this galaxy, and Ning was forced to give his AI the bulk of the information directly. That way, he would learn about it all without having to bother Ning. While eating his meal, Ning looked around in the room and saw a bunch of people walking around with bags strapped to their backs. "What are you looking at?" Toron asked after seeing Ning look at the people. "They're bags," Ning said. "They don't have a storage item, unfortunately." "I don't blame them," Toron said. "We barely created one only a few decades ago on my planet. That too after we learned how from alien technology." "Well, I guess I will have to get a bag to put the hyena's head in," Ning said and created a cloth bag before taking out the horse-sized hyena's head and putting it in the bag. "Damn it. Can you not take that out here? I'm trying to eat," Toron said with an annoyed voice. "Right, sorry," Ning said. "I'll see you later." He left the tavern and walked through the streets while looking at everyone. He saw quite a bit of people with red hair and wondered if they could have possibly dyed it. After all, it was enough of a problem for even people with red hair to go through a washing test to see if they had dyed it or not. "I wonder when my own hair will change color," he wondered. He had already done 3 summonings, but his hair had yet to change color. "Maybe I'm making the bonds wrong?" he wondered. It didn't take him long to reach the building where he took the quest and walked inside with the bag behind his back. He waited for a few minutes in line until his turn finally came around. "Here." He slammed the head of the hyena on the desk and scared the clerk. "What's that?" she asked as she opened it to see a dead beast. Contrary to what Ning thought would happen, the clerk didn't even flinch when she saw the dead beast's eyes stare right into her. "Oh, the hyena," she said as she remembered Ning from yesterday. "You already killed it?" "Yes," Ning said. "All right, give me your card," she said. Ning handed her his summoner's card and waited for her to do her thing. "Done," she said. "Would you like the reward in full pearls or dull pearls?" Ning thought for a moment and said, "Full pearls please." Ning returned from the building with another quest in hand. This one was about capturing a rank 2 beast and bringing it back to a school that was on the north side of the city. Ning walked back towards the tavern and on the way went through some shops to buy food for later. Along the way, he looked down to the pier and saw many boats coming in and out of the bay. There were thousands of them. I wouldn't expect any less from a planet with nothing but islands, Ning thought. Maybe I should talk to them about leaving soon, Ning thought. While Toron City was beautiful, it was still considered a backwater place compared to the other places in the world. Ning reached the tavern not long after and found Toron missing. He didn't bother where he had gone to and instead went to Safondra's room. Unfortunately for him, Saf was still asleep. So, without anything else to do, Ning returned back to the bar downstairs and waited around at a table. Ning was starting to get a little bored of the place. He wanted to leave and go, but then he would leave and have to leave Saf alone, who didn't know the slightest bit of the language. What do people do around here to pass their time? He wondered. He looked around and saw people talking to each other. No one was talking about spiritual energy or summoning at all. Summoning in the city was banned unless one did it with authorization from the city officials. Just as he was about to doze off from boredom, he heard someone say something that piqued his interest. Did you hear? Someone saw a person with green hair come out of a boat yesterday, one person spoke. Really? Must be someone who dyed their hair. No way a green would come to this place, the other person said. Who knows? They said the person was wearing fancy and expensive clothes. Not to mention, he was apparently with a beast, the first person said. A beast? Now that's just nonsense, the other person said. Ning got curious about their words. A green is rare here, huh? I wonder what rank the person must be in, Ning thought. Hey, sorry I'm late, Safandra said as she fell on the chair in front of Ning. It's all right. You needed your sleep, Ning said. No, it's really my fault. But that history book was quite interesting to read, she said. So, you didn't read the language book? Ning asked. Safandra gave an apologetic smile. I promise I will start it soon. I can say my name though, listen. She changed the language and said, my name is Safandra. How is you? Ning chuckled a bit. You got your name right, but you need to say how are you, not how is you, he explained. Right, I'll remember that, Safandra said. Damn it, it would be so easy if I could summon the mental prowess of a psychic beast. Right. Why is it that you can't summon again? Ning asked. I don't have any spiritual energy, Safandra said. Yes, but why don't you have any spiritual energy? Ning asked. Safandra hesitated a bit. Suddenly, the tavern door swung open with such force that everyone in the room was forced to turn around. Ning turned too and saw a person walk in with an air of elegance that told everyone in the room that he was looking down at them. He snorted a bit when he walked inside and looked through the entire room. Suddenly, his eyes fell on Ning's table. Ning looked back at him too with a curious look on his face. Green hair, he thought. This was most likely the person from the rumors. The man walked straight toward Ning's table and looked at Ning. Leave this table, I have some business with this young lady in front of me, he said. Ning gave a mocking smile back and got more comfortable in his chair. There is enough place for you to sit here if you want to, he said. You. The man got angry and Ning could see him try to use spiritual energy just then. However, since he was in a public space, he contained himself. Leave while I'm speaking to you nicely, the man said. You can save your breath. I'm not leaving here, Ning said and gave an even wider smile to Ning. Saf looked at them curiously as she couldn't understand what they were talking about, but she could sense the air between them. Is there a problem? She asked Ning. Not really, Ning said. At least, not one I can't handle. Ning turned back to the man and continued staring at him. The man had already changed his attention away from Ning and back towards Saf. Using the opportunity, Ning used his analysis technique to look at the man's information. Rank 5, huh? Not bad I guess, he thought. System, what rank am I at? Rank 5 in just 4 days is quite good, Ning said. It won't take me very long to reach the other ranks then. Miss, is your hair natural, or have you dyed it? The man asked Safandra. Safandra gave him a blank look as she could barely understand a word he said. It's natural, Ning said from his side and waited for his reaction. Buzz off kid, I'm not asking you, the man said. Well, she's not answering you, so you will have to do with me, Ning said. Miss. The man asked Safandra again. Safandra couldn't continue again. What is he saying? I can't understand a damn thing, she said. That's why I told you to read the damn language book, Ning said. He's asking if your hair is real or not. Safandra looked toward the man with a curious eye and nodded. Seeing Safandra nod, the man's eyes went wide. He had come all this way to search for talented youths. He had no expectations of this place, and yet he had found someone. He was going to make sure he didn't lose her. Miss, is it possible I can get a strand of your hair to test check it for myself? The man asked. Safandra's head shifted from the green-haired man to Ning as she looked for the translation. Who's he? Is he your man? Are you threatening her? The man suddenly got aggressive. Dude, relax, Ning said. How are you not understanding that she doesn't speak your language? What is he saying? Tell me already, Safandra asked. I think he's some sort of a recruiter. He wants a strand of your hair to check if it is legit. Then after that, he will probably tell you to come with her somewhere, Ning said. What? I don't want to go with him, Safandra said. Ning turned around and shrugged at the green-haired man. I told her that you were here to recruit her and she doesn't want to go. Are we done now? He asked. No, we're not done, the green-haired man said as an angry look appeared on his face. She doesn't even know who I am or where I'm from. How can she refuse just like that? You can be the emperor of all the land and ocean on this planet and she will still say no to you. So I suggest you don't waste your time here and go look for someone else, Ning said. Bullshit. The man said. You will tell her that I am Norin from the Infinite Beast School and that I'm looking for young people like her to join us so that they can become. Hey, where are you going? Ning stood up and walked away while the man was speaking, and now he was left alone with Safandra. Where are you going? Both Safandra and the green-haired man asked at the same time in their own languages. Here, Ning said as he pointed to an empty chair in front of him and sat on it with his head turned to the other side. If he sat at the other table with the green-haired man any longer, he was afraid he wouldn't be able to keep his composure any longer and end up beating the man. It was better to just leave him alone so he could see how useless his tries were. Well, I don't know about other things, but the man sure is persistent, Ning thought. Even while he was sitting with his head pointed towards the wall, he could still see everything. He found it funny when the man was frustrated and started talking in his own language, but this time with big gestures as if that were going to help in any way. Safandra kept shaking her head, saying no, but the man didn't take that to heart. Frustrated, Safandra put up a finger and quickly ran away from the table. The man stood there dumbstruck and didn't know what to do. He thought he had lost her and even wanted to go up the stairs to persuade her again, but to his surprise, Safandra came down back. Only this time, she had a massive book with her. She glared at Ning for a while before walking toward the green-haired man. Then she slammed the book on the table and opened it. She quickly flipped through the page and made note of a few words. Finally, she opened her mouth and spoke in a language the green-haired man would understand. Stop bothering me. If you bother me again, I will kill you, Safandra said in such a loud voice that everyone in the room heard her. They were all shocked at what she had just said, including Ning. What? The green-haired man didn't know what to say. Stop bothering me, Safandra said once again. She then took her book with her and walked away. No, wait miss. Please, I need you. Suddenly, the man felt a lurch from behind him as he was pulled directly to the wall of the tavern. The room shuddered at the force the man hit the wall and he fell to the ground. HMPH, Safandra said and walked back upstairs. Ning didn't look at her and instead turned towards the man on the floor. Poor guy, he thought. I can't believe I feel bad for him, Ning said. He waited for a few seconds and walked back upstairs. Hey, are you alright? He asked. Safandra had just reached her door inside. Yes, I'm fine. I'm just annoyed, she said. Why the hell did you leave me alone with him? Well, he wasn't taking no for an answer, so it had to come from you, Ning said. Although I was just hoping he would be frustrated enough and just decide to leave. But I guess he was looking at you for something. I don't want to be tied down to a place. I want to be a free spirit and roam around the world, Safandra said with a dreamy look in her eyes. You want to be just like Little Blue, don't you? Ning asked. What? Oh right, yeah. Just like her, Safandra said. Maybe I'm getting influenced by her freedom. Little Blue walked out of her violet hair and chirped a bit like a bird. Ning tried to understand what she was saying, but there wasn't any language to her so he couldn't understand. She's just making noise, Ning thought and sighed. He was getting curious about Little Blue, so he was about to ask a question when suddenly he heard a knock on the door. Who is it? Ning asked. You have some people that have come here to see you, a hesitating voice said. Who? Ning asked as he opened the door. The tavern owner stood outside with a grave face, so Ning wondered if the green-haired man brought assistance. He says someone's come for us downstairs, Ning said. Who? Safandra asked. I don't know, let's go see, Ning said. The two of them walked downstairs and saw the green-haired man point to them, specifically Safandra, and said, it's them. Ning looked at the neatly uniformed men and women next to the green-haired men and frowned. Who are they? Safandra asked. City guards. City guards. Really? Safandra asked. Ning nodded to her. He was sure that was who these people were. During his walk around the city, he had seen multiple people wearing such uniforms walking around. There were even some in the summoning circle building. Why are they here though? The man looks fine, and all I did was shove him a bit, Safandra said. Is something wrong, sir? Ning walked forward and spoke. This gentleman here says that your lady friend attacked him, is that correct? One of the city guards asked. That would be correct, yes, Ning said as he looked around the room. No one here was going to let him get away with a lie, so he decided to tell the truth. Well, your friend is going to have to come with us then, the guard said and moved towards them. Wait, Ning said. This is not her fault. That guy harassed her. He came to our table and started asking her to give him her hair. She refused many times but he didn't listen. In the end, she screamed at him not to bother her, but he still did. That's when she attacked him, Ning said. The city guards all looked at each other and they turned around to the green-haired man. No, that's a lie. I didn't harass her. I was being polite and asked her to. The man trailed off as he understood how wrong it would sound if he told them that he just wanted her hair. What happened here? The city guard looked to the other men for an answer. It's true, one of them spoke. The lady told him to not bother her and he still tried to go after her. She had only attacked then. Right, I was looking at the entire thing, another one spoke. As the people explained and told the city guard what happened, Safandra was getting annoyed due to the lack of understanding. What are they saying? Safandra said. Just wait, I'm trying to get you out of going to jail, Ning said. Why am I going to jail? I did nothing wrong, Safandra said. That's why I'm getting you out of going to jail. Just shut up and let me do my thing, Ning said. He then turned around and looked at the city guard. See brother, it's that man who was at fault. My friend here only retaliated as a last resort in self-defense. Her intention wasn't to hurt him, he said. Yes, it does seem that way, the city guard said. All right, take him into cuffs. The other guards suddenly pulled out some chains and put them around the man's hands. Wait, why are you taking me? He shouted. Safandra sighed at last after seeing the man get apprehended. Finally, he's gone, she thought and turned around. You. The city guard shouted at her just as she turned. Safandra turned back and gave a quizzing look. You are going to jail as well, the city guard said. What? Ning said in surprise. What? Safandra asked in confusion as she still didn't understand the language. They are taking you to jail, Ning said. Why? Safandra asked. Ning quickly turned around. I thought it was clear that she was not at fault, Ning said. It is, and she will not be charged with assault, the city guard said. But she did use summoning within public space and that is not allowed. So she will have to come to the jail as well. While Ning tried to explain what was happening, the guards started handcuffing her. What are they doing? Tell them to get these off of me or I will kill them all, Safandra said. Ning tried to think of what to do. He wondered if he should just grab her and disappear to another island. However, as he thought of that, the green-haired man started shouting. Do you know who I am? I am a delegate from the Infinite Beast School, a rank 5 summoner. My school has more people in it than your entire town. Do you want to anger me? Do you want to face my summons? The man shouted. The city guards didn't take his threat into account at first, but once they saw his hair, they started to fear him a bit. The city guards were rank 2 summoners, rank 3 at best. There was no way they could handle something like a rank 5 summoner, not to mention one with green hair. The city guard that was giving all the orders previously didn't know what to do. He mulled for a while. Maybe let us go? Ning said. No. The man finished mulling. I don't feel right making a judgment on these matters, so I will bring the two of you to the city lord. You can make your case there and see what happens. The guard was silently pushing away his responsibility and making it the city lord's matter now. Get their cuffs off, the guard said, and the handcuffs came off. All right. Let's go, the city guard said and started walking away. Let's go, Ning said and pulled Safandra. No, you don't need to go. You can stay, the guard said. Ning quickly shook his head. She speaks a language that none of you can understand. I need to be there to translate what you say to her. Otherwise, it would be unfair for her to not even be able to make her case and get punished for something she did not do, Ning said. The guard thought for a bit and said, fine, you can come along, he said. Then, the group started walking. The green-haired man stared at them from time to time, but for some reason, Ning thought he was being angry at him, rather than Safandra. I wasn't the one who attacked you though, he said. After 15 or so minutes of walking, they reached a massive house built on the side of the mountain. This was the city lord's mansion. The city lord was a big man with blonde hair that had a crimson lion walking right beside him as he walked into the hall. Ning, Saf, the green-haired man named Norin, and the city guard were all waiting for him. What is the matter here? Why have you disturbed me? The city lord asked while eyeing Norin's hair. Despite how he was acting, he was a little concerned about the man's existence in his room. The guard explained everything that had happened and even told him what Norin had told about himself. In the meantime, Ning read up on both the lion and the city lord's information. The Crimson Lion was rank 4 and so was the city lord. This infinite beast school, where exactly is it? The city lord asked. The Furian Empire, Norin said. The city lord gasped a little and quickly hid it, but everyone in the room caught his surprise. The Furian Empire, Ning thought to his map and saw where it was. The Furian Empire was on the southwestern quarter of the planet, directly opposite to where they were, and was one of the richest empire on the planet. Not only in strength, but the empire was also known for its summoners. If a school in that place had sent someone to this place, then they would have to be honored for that. I'm sorry, delegate, we treated you like this, the city lord quickly said. Hey, apologize to the delegate now, the city lord shouted. My apologies, the guard quickly apologized. You too, apologize as well, the city lord said. Ning crossed his arm and stood quietly, while Saf didn't do anything as she understood nothing. You bastard, I told you to apologize, the city lord said. Why? Ning asked. I don't remember doing anything. If I tell you to apologize, then you apologize, the city lord shouted. Yeah, I don't think so, Ning said. You bastard, the city lord got angry. Red, go scare him. The Crimson Lion suddenly moved and Saf got ready to attack in retaliation. However, Ning placed his arm in front of her and stopped her. Instead, he walked up front and stuck his hand into the open jaw of the lion that was rushing towards him. Ning then made a fist from the inside, and along with the entire lion, he directly punched the ground. Large web-like cracks appeared on the clear marbled floor, but to his surprise, the lion was perfectly fine. Then, a summoning circle appeared below the lion and it was suddenly teleported away. Try attacking me again, and this time it will be your head on this crack, Ning threatened the city lord. Ning couldn't help but narrow his eyes in surprise at the disappearance of the lion, but he held it in while he scared the city lord. Aye, shut up, Ning shouted. Are you going to put that guy in jail or not? The city lord didn't know what to say. While he had never heard about the Infinite Beast School, he was perfectly aware of the massive schools to the west that were better than most empires. They also had a big hand in the world politics, so the city lord didn't want to punish him at all. However, he was too afraid of Ning to say no. Someone who could send back a rank 4 beast with a single hit while having red hair was no ordinary being. The city lord wouldn't be surprised if Ning suddenly revealed himself to be a rank 7 spiritual artist. If that was the case, the city lord was way in over his head with the matter. He was secretly cursing the city guard for bringing such individuals to his house. All right, since you can't seem to do anything, I will make the judgment for you, Ning said. My friend here goes free without any charges. You and your boys here will overlook any other incident that happens with me and my friends. You will not disturb us anymore, and stop him from disturbing us as well. Ning then turned around to the green-haired man. I will let them do with you as they please, but if you come bother us again, you will wish that she would just kill you. Good day. Ning grabbed Saf's hand and pulled her away. What happened? What's going on? She asked. I just told them to let us do whatever we wanted, that's all, Ning said. So the man won't bother us at all? Safandra said. He shouldn't, Ning said. If he does, we will just beat him up good this time around. Well, I can't wait to beat him, Safandra said, making Ning chuckle a little. Right, I was a little confused about something that happened back there, Ning said along the way. Why did that lion disappear? Well, beasts usually survive based on the spiritual energy of its summoner. Every hit you deal to a beast eats away at the summoner's spiritual energy, and as such if you completely make them run out of spiritual energy, the pact usually ends and the beasts get unsummoned. Wait, so I can never hurt a beast that has been summoned? Ning asked. No, you can hurt it. You just have to deal damage that is higher than the summoner's energy pool. If it runs out of energy before all the damage is dealt, the beast has to handle the damage, Safandra said. Oh, so I don't have to worry about beasts dying as long as I have enough spiritual energy? Ning asked. Yeah, Safandra said. So long as you have spiritual energy, your beasts can continue fighting. I see, Ning said when a different question came to his head. Wait, why doesn't Little Blue get unsummoned, considering you don't have spiritual energy at all? Ning asked. I am a special case that doesn't happen every so often, Safandra said. Little Blue is even more special, I guess. Ning asked for more, but Safandra changed the topic, so the two of them talked about different things as they returned back to the tavern. Where have you guys been? Toron asked while chewing on a chicken leg inside the tavern. Some small trouble arose, so we had to take care of things. It's all fine now, Ning said. Well, good. I don't like trouble, Toron said. Right, how many more days are we staying in this town? I heard around the area that this is a backwater place in terms of spiritual energy amount and the talents that appear. Yeah, that might actually be the case, Ning said. If I'm not wrong, the origin of this planet should be somewhere in the southwest. Yeah, let's leave this place. I'm kind of bored already, Safandra said. Well, if that is the case then let's go get some tickets for the ship. We will sail tomorrow, Ning said. Toron nodded, while Safandra hesitated a bit. Ship? She asked. It's a water world. Ships are the primary forms of transportation, Ning said. Sigh, yeah I knew that, Safandra said. Fine, let's go get some tickets for the ship but a little later. I'm kinda tired right now. Well, you guys hand around then, I have a little task I need to complete before I leave, Ning said and left the two. He went out and went towards an alleyway. Once inside, he teleported away and appeared around a massive forest. Is this where the cub is? He wondered as he looked around the place. The other quest he had taken from the summoning circle was about capturing and returning a rank 2 cub that the academy was rearing. He tapped into his spiritual energy and soon found himself in the darkness again. I need help finding a cub. Whoever can find the cub and deliver it to me without harm can get 20% of my spiritual energy, Ning said. Suddenly a whole bunch of lights gravitated towards him. The lights ranged from all levels of intensity and while searching for one to accept, Ning noticed a familiar light. That emerald snake, he thought and grabbed a light. A bond formed instantly as the massive snake was summoned in front of him. Thank you for summoning me again. The snake's vague thoughts reached Ning, which was still surprising to him. However, after having been with 3 beasts, whose thoughts he could constantly feel, Ning wasn't fazed much by the thoughts. Go and bring me a cub of the teal tiger, Ning said. Make sure to not hurt it at all. The snake wiggled its tail and moved its tongue to agree with him and moved away. The antennae in its head would help it find the beast very easily. Ning wondered if he should have just used the system to find the cub, but he knew he wanted to practice summoning so he didn't think much of it. After 5 minutes, the snake came back with a greenish cub of a tiger that would grow to become teal in color. Finally, Ning said and grabbed the cub from the snake's mouth. Good job, you can go back now. The snake seemed a little disappointed, but a summoning circle appeared below it and it was suddenly gone. Did it want me to summon it again? Ning wondered as he felt the last vague feeling left behind by the beast. Ning then teleported close to the city and made his way towards the summoning circle with the little cub on his arm. People around the city looked at him curiously, but Ning walked to the building without much care for what people looked at. Here, he showed the cub to the clerk who was working today. It wasn't the same clerk as the one he was used to meeting, but they were easily informed after he showed the quest papers. Thank you for finding this cub. The academy has been really worried about the cub, the clerk said. It's no problem, Ning said. Can I get paid in dull pearls? Sure, the man said and paid him in pearls that were devoid of spiritual energy. Once he was done, Ning left the summoning circle, but this time he didn't take another quest as he would be leaving the next day. Ning made his way back to the tavern and took the two of them to the dock area. "What exactly are we looking for again?" Toron asked as he walked around. "Find out about boats that are leaving for the Darius Kingdom. That will be our next destination," Ning said. "Darius, huh? Got it," Toron said and looked around. Safandra had an annoyed face that neither Ning nor Toron could ignore. "Do you really hate boats all that much?" Ning asked. "Not hate," Safandra said. "I'm more scared of them. I only nearly drowned and I have a trauma from that." Ning looked at her weirdly. "Can't you fly? Why would you be worried about drowning?" he asked. Safandra gave an embarrassed look and said, "I was so scared when I fell into the water that I forgot what I could and couldn't do." "Was this before or after the people in your world died?" Ning asked curiously. "After," Safandra said. "How did you survive?" Ning asked. "I involuntarily pushed away all the water in the area and could finally breathe again. I don't even remember doing that, but I survived thanks to it," Safandra said. "Well, don't worry about drowning then. We're here to save you," Ning said. "Besides, you should start trying to swim now if you are going to live on this planet full of water." Safandra nodded. "Hey, I found one," Toron shouted and Ning walked towards him. They quickly found the boat that was going to leave and started searching for the staff. Once they found the staff, they quickly found the location from where they could buy their tickets. Each ticket cost them about 10 full pearls, which was cheap for them since Ning could just make as many of them as he wanted to. "Alright, so tomorrow morning at 7:30, Ning told Safandra and Toron. "We will have to board the ship by then." "I'm dying, aren't I?" Safandra asked with a deathly face. Blood had drained from her face as she lay on the floor unable to move. How could I have let this happen?" she asked, her voice barely louder than the noise around her. Ning looked at Safandra with a frustrated face as he brought out something from his storage. He reached over to her face and opened her mouth before putting it in. "Eat this," he said as he made her swallow it. Safandra swallowed it without asking and finally, her deathly face got better. "I thought I was going to die," she said as she slowly stood up. "Stop exaggerating," Ning said with an annoyed voice. "It's just seasickness. You'll be fine now that you've taken your medicine." Ning left her be and walked out of her room. Then, he went out of the hallway to the deck and felt the cool air of the ocean. There was water as far as he could see with no sign of land anywhere close. It had been half a day since they started their journey in the morning and were currently less than a quarter of the way through. It was a 3-day-long journey with no stops, so there was still plenty of time for everything. Ning looked at the different fishes that swam underneath him and wondered if there were any monsters there at all. "Hey brother," Ning called out to a sailor that worked on the ship. "Yes." The young man came up to him. "How often do the beasts come to attack from underneath the water?" Ning asked. "Oh, very often, sir," the sailor said. "But don't worry. We have 5 rank 3 summoners that are constantly monitoring the water underneath and fighting away any beast that comes to attack us." "But they are only rank 3 though," Ning said. "What if a stronger beast comes by?" "Well, fortunately, beasts higher than rank 4 or 5 are pretty much impossible to find around here, and they also don't like bothering us humans, so we are fine," the sailor said. "I see," Ning said. "Thank you for answering." Ning stayed on the deck for a while and simply enjoyed the journey. They were headed west, so the day was going to last longer than normal. With nothing else to do, Ning returned to his room and started studying the different pieces of information he had in his mind. Primarily, the information on the summoning circle was what he went for. After a few hours of studying, he got bored and went out to check on the other two. He knocked on Toron's door, but he was missing, so he went to Safandra's door and knocked on it. Safandra opened up the door. "Oh, you're looking healthy now," Ning said. "Well, it feels good not having to throw up every few seconds," she said. "What are you doing?" he asked and looked behind her to see a book on the bed. "Are you studying the language?" "Yes," Safandra said. "Want to quiz me?" Sure," Ning said and stayed with her for a while, asking various questions for her to answer. Ning saw that she was definitely getting better. A few more weeks of learning, and she would be able to hold a normal conversation with anyone, at least an understandable one. As they were studying, there was a knock on the door. "Dinner time," the sailor shouted. On the ship, there were 2 meals a day, lunch and dinner. As for breakfast and supper, one could just go grab a fruit from the dining hall if they were hungry. "I'm really hungry," Safandra said. "I would hope so," Ning said. considering you skipped out on lunch and threw up everything else that was in your body. Yeah, let's not remind me of that, Safandra said as she made a gagging motion. Even the thought of vomiting is making me want to vomit now. You'll be fine, you've eaten the medicine, Ning said. How did you even come across the medicine? Safandra asked as she got ready to leave. What do you mean how? I bought it in the city. They sell all kinds of stuff that are useful in the sea, Ning said. The two of them walked over to the dining hall and found Toron already sitting at one of the tables, surprisingly with another girl they hadn't met before. When did he meet a girl? Safandra asked. Most likely while you were in your room, trying not to throw up, Ning said. I told you to stop reminding me of that, Safandra said as she kicked his leg. Ning pretended to get hurt and laughed a little. They then lined up and took a place each to grab their food. There were varieties of food for dinner and Ning chose a little of all of them. At the very least, he was going to taste it all. Safandra only took what she recognized and let the rest be. Once they grabbed their food, Ning looked around to see where they should sit. Shouldn't we go by Toron? Safandra asked. Let's not disturb him, Ning said. He will probably hate us if we bother him at the moment. Well, then we should go sit over there with that bastard, Safandra shouted. With who now? Ning was surprised and looked at where she pointed and saw a man wearing a hood, sitting alone at a table. Despite his hood, however, his long green hair spilled along his side and Ning recognized who he was looking at. That bastard, Ning said as well. Do you think he followed us? Safandra asked. I don't know. Want to find out? He asked. Sure, Safandra said and took the lead before walking towards the man. She slammed her tray onto the table, surprising the man. Hey, what are you? The man was even more surprised this time when he saw Safandra. Ning sat down by her side and looked at the man with a serious face. Are you following us? He asked. What? No, I'm not following you. The green-haired man named Nullor said hurriedly before Safandra would beat him. Now that they were on open waters, if either Ning or Safandra held a grudge against him, he would be as good as dead. Then why are you here? Safandra asked while secretly looking at Ning to see if she said it correctly. She felt a little happy when Ning nodded. It was just a coincidence. I boarded the ship without knowledge of you guys coming here. After what happened in the city, I simply wanted to return back to my school, the man said. Safandra side-eyed Ning and asked, what is he saying? I only understood, city, and want to return. Ning sighed and explained what he said before turning back to the man. Was this really a coincidence? He asked. Yes, I swear to God, the man said. In fact, I have been staying in my room the whole day so I don't have to interact with you. Ning sighed again. It's all right, you don't have to do that. Just don't bother us and you can do whatever you want, he said. Thank you, Nullor said. Ning explained Safandra what he said to him and she nodded as well. Then, as if the man in front of them wasn't there, they started eating. Nullor quietly finished his meal and started walking away. However, just as he was leaving, he saw something and turned to look at Ning. I don't mean to bother you, but that is your friend, right? Nullor said while secretly pointing to Toron. I saw you guys boarding together this morning. Yes, why? Ning asked. Well, the woman he's with is called Pamela, and she is just like me. A delegate from a big school called the Thousand Summons School. I believe she's trying to scout your friend as well, he said. Why would she? My friend doesn't have any spiritual energy. He's not a summoner, Ning said. No spiritual energy? The man looked at Toron once again, but he's full of it. He is? Ning looked at Toron, but he couldn't sense anything on him. Are you sure? I'm using a summon to look at him and he's full of it, Nullor said. Unless that man has eaten dozens of spiritual pearl, he's definitely a summoner. Ning said as he finally understood what was happening. Toron had in fact most likely had his nanosuit eat a bunch of spiritual pearls and that was making him look like a particularly strong summoner. He. Ning chuckled a bit. She's going to have a particularly bad time when she realizes he's not one. Anyway, I've said what I wanted to say. I will leave you two alone now, Nullor said and left. Safandra as usual didn't understand the conversation, so Ning had to explain to her it all again. It's not like he's weak, Safandra said. Even if they do take him, they will have succeeded in their search for finding strong individuals. You're not wrong there, Ning said. But he can't summon. At least not for a long time. Huh? Safandra gave a weird look. Are you saying he can learn to summon even if he can't use spiritual energy? No, he will learn to use spiritual energy. As long as you stay in a planet long enough, you will get acclimated to the energy there. In fact, for some of the energy like chi, you don't even need to get acclimated to the energy before you can start your journey in it. Only you won't get very far with just that, Ning said. I wonder if spiritual energy is the same. Although there is no absorption technique for it, so we will never know. I am going to act like I understood most of what you meant and shut up, Safandra said. The two of them quickly finished the rest of their meals and walked out of the dining hall onto the deck. Vera was up in the sky, lighting the world around them in her silver colors. That moon is quite close, Ning said. Is it? Safandra asked. My world didn't even have a moon. We only had a large ring of floating rocks around our planet. Well, this planet has two of them, so you are in luck, Ning said. He looked back at the water and the sky that was nothing but silver in color and remembered Kumiya and its moon. He was starting to miss it again. More exactly, he was starting to miss its people. I never got to see such sights back in Kumiya since cultivators had such good vision, Ning thought. This world wouldn't look as majestic if I could see everything as well. Ning silently activated his vision skill to see the world as if it was a bright day. The water looked clear and the sky bright blue. He could see the dark and light clouds, and off in the distance he could see some other ship on the water. Nullor was massive and mostly covered in water, so seeing ships in the sea from time to time wasn't so rare. However, this ship in particular was a bit weird. Ning closed his vision and suddenly the ship disappeared as well. It was invisible in the darkness of the night as there was no light aboard it. What the hell? Ning thought as he zoomed his vision to look at the ship more clearly. The ship was definitely moving in the water. An abandoned ship? Ning wondered out loud. A what? Safandra asked. That ship, there's a ship right there, Ning said as he pointed in the distance. I think it's abandoned, but it doesn't seem that bad and looks maintained. I wonder why there aren't any lights there. Maybe they ran out of glowing pearl? Safandra asked. In the ocean? Yeah, right, Ning said. I think I will go check. Wait, I'll come with you, she said and started flying. However, before she could lift much further away from the deck, Ning grabbed her leg and directly teleported onto the other ship.